So today I'm going to be going over what I'm doing currently for my dynamic effort training for bench press. So I learned about this recently going over an Elite FTS bench press manual. And this is a training method that they used to use at Westside back in the day. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard of dynamic effort training, and if you haven't, what that is using sub-maximal weights moved at max velocity. So you're trying to move the bar as fast as you can, and because the weights are submaximal, you can move those weights at a pretty fast speed. Now, this version of dynamic effort training is called lactate tolerance training. Basically, all that means is that we're going to be doing very short rest periods. So between 20 and 30 seconds of rest. So I'm watching the clock in between each set, and at 20 seconds, I'm getting my set up ready so that I'm pretty much going by that 30-second mark. Now, a key component to the dynamic effort method is that even though the weights are sub-maximal, you're trying to move them at max velocity. This is called compensatory acceleration training, which was a term coined by Dr. Squat himself, Fred Hatfield, back in the day, or at least he was the one that's how I learned about this term, and I think he was the one who popularized it. And it's just the idea that regardless of the weight on the bar, you're trying to move it as fast as possible. What that does is it takes these lifts a little bit out of a bodybuilding and hypertrophy focus, even though it can still help with some hypertrophy, so now that's the less of a focus, and makes it more performance-based. So we're working on speed, strength, and power production with this method, as opposed to, even though I'm bench pressing, I'm not necessarily doing it for muscle hypertrophy. So now we're going to get a little bit more into why this method is useful for performance. So again, even though this is a bench press, we're taking the fact of muscle hypertrophy out of this, just for now. What everybody's after is speed and power production, especially for field athletics, okay? The type of muscle fibers that we use for that are going to be type 2 muscle fibers. These are also known as fast twitch muscle fibers. And then I'm going to say that in a bunch of different ways. So they're type 2, they're fast twitch, they're high threshold motor units, and a motor unit is the nerve and then all the muscle fibers it innervates, or other words like activates or turns on, another way of thinking about that term. So these are our big speed, power, and strength muscle fibers, okay? So this is where a lot of performance is going to come from. So there are a couple ways that we can actually stimulate or use these high threshold motor units. The first way is to go super heavy. Generally, if you have some sort of measurement of strength, once you're above 80% or more for a 1 rep max, you're going to be primarily using your fast twitch muscle fibers. It's heavy enough that you need to use your power and strength muscle fibers. The next thing that we can do to actually activate these high threshold motor units is speed. Now, it's not necessarily, it's a little bit of speed in what you see here, I'm trying to move the bar as fast as I can, but the reality is even a barbell lift in terms of absolute speed is still pretty slow. So when I say speed, I'm talking about plyometric movements or jumping movements or max sprinting, where I'm going to actually stimulate the really, really high threshold motor units, okay? So we have really heavy, we have moving really fast, and then the last way that I'm aware of that we can really get into these high threshold motor units is through fatigue buildup. So this is where it does kind of tie into hypertrophy a little bit. As you start out, with a light weight, far away from fatigue, or with a lot of reps in reserve, you're using the the low threshold motor units, the small, slow twitch muscle fibers. But as that fatigue builds up and builds up, your body realizes it needs more and more force production. So it starts to recruit the high threshold motor units eventually. That's like working to failure. You're going to be working within those high threshold motor units. But that's why the dynamic effort method, it's really important to have a specific rest period for. If you just rest however long that you want, then you're going to lose some of the training effect. You're not going to let that fatigue build up. So I think that there's going to be some less fast twitch muscle fiber stimulation, because you're just letting that fatigue clear itself out. So give this training protocol a try. I did 9x3 with 20 to 30 seconds break in between. This is 145, which is 47% of my max. So I kind of worked on a wave 45, 47 and a half to 50% of my 1 rep max for my 3 weeks. So try it around that percentage and see how it feels. See if you think it transfers into your heavy lifts a little bit more efficiently. Well, have a good day. Go try dynamic effort method.